Yeah, it looks pretty. Did you go to the beauty parlor? Your hair got long or something, Lynn?
Oh, that's an old picture. All right, turning this mic over to you, Susan Michelle. This mic is all yours.
Hi, this is
Hi.
Susan Michelle. I am here in Western Massachusetts. I am the author of Surrender to Joy from Suicide to Serenity, based on the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which I have been studying now for 34 years alongside my good friend Myrna Scholar from Florida, who always looks beautiful, but looks especially beautiful today. How are you doing, Myrna?
It's funny you say that. You know, I can't do anything with my hair. That's what I do with it. I just put it up and,
I
and hope for
love
the
it.
best. You know,
I
anyway.
love it. I've never seen it like that. I love it.
Um, well, anyway, thank
And
you.
Myrna is the author of Private Lessons with Jesus. I have the lesson of the day marked with my little yellow sticky pad. Private Lessons with Jesus from A Course in Miracles. And she has the subject of each lesson written the same as the workbook for students of A Course in Miracles, but Jesus Christ downloaded personal information to her on each lesson. Correct, Myrna?
Yes, I asked, and when I asked, I received. And that's really the way, the best description I could give of it. The book started on an idea, really. I was going to do the lessons as had done them several times. I was starting with lesson one, and I put the Course in Miracles book aside, and I asked Jesus if we could do it another way, if he would speak to me about personally about each lesson. So I would put the title of the lesson into the computer, and because I can type, I was just sort of trying to listen and type what I was hearing, and everything became a complete surprise to me because I didn't know if that would what would happen, what would come of it. But I was typing what my thoughts were telling me, and I was transcribing it. I was recently talking, I think it was to Dev, about channeling and what channeling is. And I don't even like to call this channeling because it implies that I'm doing something that no one else can do, or very few people can do, or that I'm gifted somehow. And that's not the case at all. Anybody can channel, and there are so many more avenues for channeling today, right, Susan? You hear so many people that claim that they're channeling, and that's because they're listening to their higher voice. That's what they're listening to.
I think we all have the ability to channel. I think A Course in Miracles is teaching us to channel. It's about releasing our fear, releasing our ego, releasing our egoic thought system, and listening to the clarity and wisdom of our soul. So you're right. You're not special. Neither am I. Neither was Jesus. Like, we're all part of the same sonship. We all have the potential to connect to God's divine consciousness when we can release our fear. So I just think it's so fabulous that you were able to publish this book and you were so dedicated and diligent listening to Christ speak through you each and every day. But yes, we all have that ability. And when I can tap into that greater consciousness, I mean, there's so much joy, there's so much clarity, there's so much unconditional love. But yeah, whenever we think we're special, I think whenever I start thinking that I have some ability that my brothers and sisters don't have, well, then all of a sudden the ego gets me, then I kind of lose the God connection, and the ego gets me. Because whenever we think we're superior or inferior, that's not Christ, that's the ego. Um, But I've been feeling, as I told you before our talk today, more connected. I think for me, I still have triggers in this world, and I'm really using Dove's advice, David Fishman, and doing my best to see my triggers as my teachers and praying to the Holy Spirit to help me heal the wounds that need healing. Um, I had a long phone call with one of my friends who triggers me, and it was such a beautiful healing conversation. I think what happened is she was feeling triggered by me. I was feeling triggered by her. And when we really, it's not what you say it. You told me this, Myrna. It's not what you say it. It's not what you say. It's how you say it. Are you coming from a place of love when you're communicating? And I was doing my best to communicate from a place of love and vulnerability. And I think when I didn't feel the need to attack her, when my only goal was to see the Christ within her, then I could access that state of consciousness within myself. My goal was not to win. My goal was to love her. And by loving her, I was able to feel the love within me. That was my goal, and I gave it to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit assisted me in that goal. And I saw the beauty in her. I saw the vulnerability in her. I saw the hurt that she was feeling. And I did not judge her. I just saw her as a child of God. And I felt that state of mind within myself. And she is not a Course in Miracles student. She's a born again Christian, but it doesn't really matter. Right, Myrna?
It's funny you say that because I have a friend, Gloria. Gloria and I go back. We were teenagers, actually. She's my oldest friend. And the two of us really almost had a clashing relationship, if you will. Although I love her and we've been through so much together, and we could tell each other anything, we can open up with each other, and that's the beauty of the relationship. But we would also fight. If I was driving and she was telling me what to do, I'd yell at her, vice versa. And then I found, I'd say within the last year or so, the two of us really have just shown each other in a love space, that love. We both eliminated that egoic form of speaking, arguing, deliberating, whatever you call it. And we've been able to find ourselves. And this has been consistent. It's not just something that happened yesterday. It's been consistent. And I just want to add that we went to see a play, The Sunshine Boys, at the JCC here in Florida. And the play is about these two old men they were vaudeville performers together, and they're getting together 40 years later to do another performance, to come back, to have a performance one night. But they keep fighting, and they're fighting, and you said this, you didn't say that, you didn't say it that way. Instead, I'll knock on the door. He knocks on the door. Instead of saying come in, he says enter. No, that's not the way we did it 40 years ago. You said come in, you didn't say enter. And they argued back and forth. And I turned to Gloria and I said, Gloria, we used to argue just like that. And she laughed, because that's exactly how we were arguing. You're not getting anywhere. You don't get anywhere that way, because I have to be right. She has to be right. She's upset with me. I'm upset with her. It's amazing that we lasted as long as we did, based on the fact that it wasn't always coming from a place of love, from the heart. But what we've done, and I would say it's going to be like that for life. We're never going to go back to that old venue. We're going to be able to move on. We both realize it. And it's wonderful, because you know what? She might say something. I won't become triggered by it. I really won't. And that because that's judgment. The Course of Miracles speaks about that, judging. And I find that being more accepting of the things that she says, whether I agree with them or not, really makes the difference. I don't have to judge what she's saying. I can just accept her. And like Ken Wapnick says, you know, the world I see is an outward picture of an inward condition. That's really what it is. So,
Yeah, there's a lot that you said there, Myrna. I mean, our special relationships are when we blame the other person, we judge the other person, we try to win arguments, and we all have them because I think if we were enlightened, we wouldn't even be born. We wouldn't even be in this earthly classroom. So we all have lessons to learn. And I think the purpose of A Course in Miracles and of our spiritual journey is to turn our special relationships into holy relationships. And for me, right now, what that entails is owning my pain instead of blaming the other person for my pain. And again, I quote this poem just about every Pal Talk, YouTube talk that I have. Every time I speak, because it's so important in my spiritual journey, I want to know, Oriah Mountain Dreamer wrote in the invitation, I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without trying to hide it or fade it or fix it. That's just a very important part of my healing process, is to, instead of blaming the other person, instead of blaming circumstances, the external world is just a reflection of an internal condition. So when there's something within us that has not yet been fully healed, it's going to be reflected to us from the outside world. But again, it's only so we can forgive the other person. And by forgiving the other person, we're forgiving the part of ourself that has not yet been healed. By forgiving the other person, we're forgiving ourselves. So another situation that arose in the past few days is my feeling of feeling like I'm on the outside, feeling like I'm separate, feeling excluded. That's like a core trigger point. And I was having dinner with a couple of friends whom I love dearly. They're two of my closest friends. And because of the seating of the table, the way the chairs were set up, the girl in the middle could not talk to both of us, I guess without hurting her neck. Because we were kind of sitting side by side, and also the restaurant was really loud. So she was talking to the girl on the opposite side of the table than I was. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I mean, it was a really weird situation because, talk about how your head is fighting with your heart. Like intellectually, I knew that she wasn't excluding me from the conversation on. Like I understood that it was a weird setting of the table. I understood, I intellectually knew that the restaurant was loud. I knew that they loved me. Like I knew all this, but my heart was feeling like that little girl on the schoolyard in elementary school, with no one to play with. I was always like standing on the outside growing up in elementary school, watching all the other children play, and nobody wanted to play with me. So my head understood that nobody was excluding me intentionally. My heart felt like that little girl on the playground with no one to play with, and I felt like crying. It was like a weird scenario, and this has happened to me often in this lifetime. So I started praying, I just sat there, I started praying. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. I prayed in the bathroom. I came back to the table, and it did get better. It did get better. And I never confronted or shared my feelings with my friend. My friend actually started talking to me about it. She said, you know, Susan, it was really hard because I couldn't talk to both of you at the same time. So it did end up getting resolved. But I think we all have different triggers. Like if you were in that situation, Myrna, you probably wouldn't react the same way I reacted. If my husband was in that situation, he probably wouldn't react the same way I reacted. It's because something in me has not yet been healed. So it's something that I need to take a look at. And today in my meditation, I actually went back to my childhood, and I went to the wounded inner child, the little me, standing on the playground with no one to play with, and I gave her a hug, and I let her know that I was there for her. I mean, I've been trying to heal that part of myself for so long now, and I don't know why I still have those feelings when I'm in certain situations. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Myrna?
Of course I do, of course. First of all, I would feel the same way you felt. That's the ego in us. If I was sitting there and I felt that they weren't giving me enough attention, I would have, felt very badly. Now, how I would have reacted, maybe we just react differently, but that inner feeling of hurt is there. Okay, that's the core of it, really. The reaction is just what the body does. That's all it really is. So I can understand that. I totally can. That's the lessons that we have to learn through our life, because yes, it does go back to childhood. I remember situations in my childhood where I felt completely, I was never given a whole lot of self-confidence. If anything, believe me, I had a hard time because my sister was the smart one. She was the one who was getting honors, and she was, and the whole family thought she was a genius. And she's the first one that went to college. Whereas me, all right, I was never, I felt stupid because I could never compete with her. And I stopped trying to compete with her. I stopped trying to, I went the other way. So that made it really worse in a way in the eyes of the people that I lived with, my parents. Well, I didn't have a father. My father passed away, but that's another story. But my family never regarded me the way they did her. But, as it turned out, I developed a different part of my brain. And the part of the brain that I developed is that because I had a tough childhood, it really made it, I became stronger in order to be able to heal or be able to fend for myself. My sister really, because she got so much agreement, and this is my feeling in my adult years, that she was not a strong person. She would be hurt very easily. You had to watch your words with her. She was very sensitive. She was not, and she should have had so much confidence because she got so much recognition growing up. But I think that her problem was that she had now a lot to live up to. She was very, very pressured. Like my mother said, she hated playing the piano, hated it, but she took piano lessons because she was afraid of the piano teacher. And I remember that. I remember her not liking the piano. I was so glad that they didn't subject me to that. But those are just examples. We carry things from our childhood into our adult years. Everybody has lessons to learn, whether you're accepted, whether you're not accepted. My sister was the most accepted person in the world. Everybody loved her. She was in the sorority. She was beautiful. She was this. She was that. She had a lot to live up to. And I often wondered why she had such low self-confidence. You know what I'm saying? Not that she wasn't successful, because she was a very bright woman, but she ended up passing away anyway. She died of cancer on 2019. And I loved her, and I really did. But I see that we grow up with whatever it is that we have to learn, and whatever it is we have to experience, good, bad, or indifferent. If we can learn, if we could only learn, if we could only learn what our purpose is, despite all of that, and everything else is just garbage, then that's when we're really catapulted forward. Do you agree with that?
I do. I do. I believe that our lessons are all about learning to love unconditionally. I do believe in reincarnation. Course in Miracles takes no stance on reincarnation because reincarnation doesn't really matter because the only time is now. I believe that we have lessons in the lifetimes that we live, and what we have not healed in one lifetime ends up surfacing itself again in the next lifetime. We can even take that philosophy and just stay in the lifetime that we're in. It's like when we haven't forgiven one person, we end up meeting another person that reflects that same lack of forgiveness back to us. If I have one boyfriend that I have not yet forgiven for not being available for me, and I decide to break off the relationship instead of working through the issue, I end up meeting another boyfriend that is never available for me. That's just the way life works. We attract situations to us until we learn to forgive that person, forgive that situation, and then we can move on to our next lesson. So it's all about unconditional love. And I think from our childhood, I guess we have certain wounds. Everybody has certain pain points. It's interesting because the pain points, it's very similar. You know, when I talk to my friends and we're both open and we're both vulnerable, you know, I think there's so many of my friends have a fear of abandonment. So many of my friends have a fear of like offending some. I mean, we all have similar pain points. But again, it's like the God brings those wounds to the surface not to punish us. We actually attract events and situations to us because our lesson is always forgiveness. Our lesson is always unconditional love. And when that pain point feels itself, we no longer get triggered in that area of our life. You know, Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, he writes very succinctly, specifically about what I'm saying right now. I've learned a lot from Michael Singer. It's like, and again, Dove, our triggers are our teachers. You know, we learn to be grateful for our triggers. It's like when we get triggered, God is showing us something within ourself that has not yet been healed. And when we can forgive the other person, what that's all about, it's all about self-forgiveness. And then we can actually just kind of let it go and move on. We've learned to love the person that hurt us, but it's never about the other person. It's always about self-love, learning to love ourselves. So I've had quite a few experiences with that in the past week, and it's all really beautiful. I mean, I feel plugged into my God socket because I feel like I've been able to own my pain, and I feel like the Holy Spirit is helping me to transform my pain. You know, I think by overcoming our pain, we find our purpose. We find what we were born to give to the world by overcoming our pain. We're allowing our darkness to show us the light. You know, it's I always read the same paragraph too from A Course in Miracles. The escape, this is in chapter 1, Roman numeral 4, the escape from darkness. The escape from darkness involves 2 stages. First, the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. So I mean, there's a part of us that wants to maintain a perfect facade. There is a part of us that wants to appear together all the time. And then sometimes when we get triggered, we feel guilty. We feel, horrified, like, oh my gosh, what if the world sees that I'm not perfect? But we're feeling guilty, but God is applauding. Thank you for allowing the darkness to come to the light. Now I can help you to heal it. Right, Myrna? That's what triggers our
that's
fear.
amazing. It really is. You know what I find? That you're right. When you hide things, of course you feel guilty because you're not even sharing it with God. You're kind of running away from God. Oh, it's funny because now I mean, I share everything with God. If I did something wrong, I would share it with God. Sometimes I'll have a thought, an attack thought. I'll think of something that happened in my past and I'll attack that person. And then I'll say to Jesus, Jesus, I just attacked myself. Didn't I? Didn't I just attack myself? I always give it back. This is what I just did. And he always says, yeah, you sure did. And, and then I can either laugh at it or, just let it go. Once we realize these thoughts are coming into our mind, thoughts that are not helping us, thoughts that are really keeping us bound to the ego. Once, we see those thoughts coming up and learning to let them go, not hiding them, not harboring them, not blaming somebody because of them. Okay, and then having an altercation. It's about giving it to God and saying, I just attacked myself. Please help me to learn from this or whatever. But now I'm aware and I have less and less of those thoughts because, talk about forgiveness. I think once we forgive one person completely and absolutely, then you forget everybody's forgiven. It's all one. And you kind of feel that release if you can find it in your heart to do that. So forgiveness is so much a part of the ego, just as love is so much a part of spirit. Where would we rather be? But we don't always stay there, even though we can, even though we have an open invitation and we could be there always, but we don't. We don't stay there. We bring those thoughts on. We think that those thoughts just come involuntarily, and perhaps they do. But even if they do, what's the difference if we can learn to let go of them and then, relate to yourself differently because you've unloaded so much. I have so much less baggage that I'm dragging around than what I used to. And of course, I attribute the Course in Miracles to that, but at the same time, it took time. It didn't happen overnight. Look how long you and I have been studying it. Well, look how long we've been learning to practice it. The ego is a relentless obstacle, and it just doesn't give up easily. But if we learn to handle the ego without fearing it, without giving into it, by just knowing that it's there and sort of ignoring it if you can, and not fighting with it, because we fight with the ego, I didn't want that thought, and then feeling guilty about it, because now you're feeding the ego when you do that. It's about just handing it over to God, handing it over to Holy Spirit, to then letting it go. It helps a lot when we can bring that spirituality into ourselves. at times when we think that that we're really the most vulnerable, just like what you did. You did the right thing. You went into the bathroom and you prayed to God. You didn't want to feel that way. You caught that feeling. You didn't like it. And recognizing that this was something in you, it wasn't about them, it was about you. You recognized that. And in speaking to God, you were able to see that and then bring it into the picture in a different way. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you, Myrna. It's so interesting because I know myself so well. Because of all the analyzation and therapy that I've done over the years, growing up, when my dad was upset, he would attack the other person. When my mom was upset, she would shut down. She wouldn't say a word. And I think when I get triggered, those are my first two inclinations. First, I again, in my head, I don't really act on it anymore, but I want to attack like my dad, because I feel hurt and I want to protect myself by attacking. And then my other inclination is just to shut down and to not say a word, but to cut myself off from the other person. And that's another way of protecting myself. And what I have learned to do since becoming deeper into A Course in Miracles, since doing a lot of self-reflection, is to really keep my heart open, because the truth is, when something really hurts, it's because I care so much, because I do love the person that's triggering me. So instead of attacking, projecting my fear, instead of shutting down, internalizing my fear, I guess that's what I'm doing. Whether I project my fear externally or I shut down and I internalize my fear, I project my fear internally, that creates disease in the body. I want to just stay present with the feeling. And I feel by taking responsibility for the feeling, by owning the pain, by praying at the same time, I can give it to the Holy Spirit. I can give it to the part of myself that just loves me unconditionally, and I can release the pain that way. I feel like that's the healthiest way to deal with the feelings when they come up, because every time a feeling does come up, that doesn't feel so good, every time an uncomfortable feeling gets triggered within us, it's only so we can clear our channel. It's only so we can release it. It's only so we can, I guess, release the pain point and connect to God in a more intimate way. So I'm happy with how I am able to handle life's challenging situations lately. I know when I'm in the midst of a trigger, I don't like it. I don't like it, and I want to escape. I do, but I think everybody feels like that. I think everybody has a hard time in uncomfortable situations. You know what I just remembered, actually, talking about people having a hard time in uncomfortable situations. It was yesterday. I was in the train station in New York City, and it was when I came in, I think my train was leaving in 1 minute. So the next train wasn't for like 40 minutes. So I decided to take a chance and try to catch the train that was leaving in 1 minute. So I'm running across the New Jersey Transit, going downstairs to try to catch my train into Secaucus, and I missed it by 15 seconds. It was just they just closed the door. And for whatever the reason, I didn't react. I said, okay, it is what it is. Right next to me, there was a young African American gentleman who did not take it so well. And and I'm not judging him because I have been in his shoes on numerous occasions where I did not take it so well. I am not judging him. I'm just, I guess, depicting a situation to the best of my ability. And he was yelling, he was on the phone, and he was swearing, and he was screaming, and he was saying a lot of racial slurs, and he was so angry. And we both got on the same elevator, and he continued to swear and scream and, scream these racial slurs. I was a little nervous actually, but, and then we got off the elevator. I didn't judge him, except I was a little nervous being on the same elevator with him because he was just so angry. I didn't judge him, but I don't know, just looking at that situation, it's so easy to get caught up in rage. It's so easy to get caught up in the dynamics of the ego. It's so easy to just let hatred overtake you. But we don't have to go there. We always have a choice. And when we can stay connected to source energy, when we can stay connected to unconditional love, life is joyful. And I guess something else that was kind of healing is I didn't judge him. I just remembered all the times that I felt like that, and I reacted like that when I missed a train when I was living in New York. Oh my gosh, I was a little bit crazy numerous times. I guess I just, another revelation I had, a realization I had, is that the world really needs healing. I do believe that the world really needs healing right now, because I don't know, a part of me wasn't sure what was going on with the whole racism issue, but he was yelling racial slurs, and he was blaming Caucasians or white people for his problems. And I've heard white people blame Black people. I mean, it can go either way. But it's not about the color of our skin. Today is Martin Luther King Day, actually. I've been hearing these Martin Luther King sayings today. And one of Martin Luther King's sayings was, we're going to get to the point someday where we're not judged by the color of our skin. We're judged by the strength of our character. Well, of course, in Miracles says, release the judgment, get back to love. But the color of our skin is so inconsequential, but the world needs miracle workers. The world needs love.
There you go. Isn't that what your purpose is? I was just thinking about that today. What is my purpose? That is my purpose. That's exactly what my purpose is. It made me feel so good to feel that way. If I was a little kid and I knew that my purpose was to save the world, I would have been a lot happier growing up if I really knew that. My purpose is to exactly what you're saying. Just, the world, recognizing the world is in need of healing. And this is why the whole Course in Miracles came about, because Jesus knew that the world is in need of healing. And the Course in Miracles says that we can save 1,000 years. And I want to save 1,000 years. I want to try to be the best I can be. You're right. Missing that train. I felt it when you said that. My heart wrenched, because I really felt what you were feeling. I mean, to have to run and try to catch a train and then miss it. I mean, that I remember running to catch trains and catching it by this much, and thank God, that kind of thing. So, it's a matter of understanding that situations like that are going to come about, and that, if you're just calm about it, calm about it, things will change. The wait won't be so long. You may want to go to the bookstore and pick up a book that that you want to read. You want to maybe call somebody on your cell phone while you're waiting. I mean, in other words, if you're calm, you can find other ways of relaxing. So yeah, I mean, and this guy that you're talking about, he's a prime candidate for heart attack or all kinds of illness. Don't we bring on our own illnesses? Don't you think that he's a prime candidate in order to become sick? I mean, in the Course in Miracles doesn't agree with sickness. Sickness is against the truth, right? Isn't that the line is something to that effect?
It's when I looked at him, I was a little fearful on the elevator just because he was.
I just want to say, sickness is a defense against the truth. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It's yours.
No, don't be sorry. Right. Sickness is a defense against the truth. When I was on the elevator, I was a little fearful, just to be completely honest, because he was just so angry and he was throwing so many racial slurs out there. I was a little nervous, and I think I'm a little claustrophobic anyway in elevators. I've never loved elevators.
Well, I have to relate a story to you when you're done. A story that when you're done, just what you're saying. Relating
I'll finish very quickly. I didn't judge him though. I really didn't. I saw him as a part of me, as a part of the sonship. He was having a really bad day and he was really, really angry, and he just kind of reflected back to me that the world needs healing, and I did send him love. I did. When I think back to the situation, I think anytime I go into a situation where I see someone behaving inappropriately and I judge him, that's ego. But when I see someone behaving, because everything is either love or a call for love, and he was really calling out for love. He didn't know that he was calling him out for love, but I did see him as someone who was calling out for love. And I think mentally I did send him love. And I just remembered back to all the times that I felt like that. So maybe that was part of my lesson, being in that circumstance. And yes, please tell me about your story, Myrna, that had to do with being enclosed in an elevator.
Okay, but I wanted to also mention that this guy that you sent love to, you absolutely were fulfilling your purpose, because he probably received it. And maybe if it made this much of a difference or changed him to some degree, that's what changing the world is all about.
But it's never about judgment. I guess that is like one of my main points here. It's never about judgment, because whenever I go into judgment, and so much of the world does go into judgment so very often, but whenever we start judging the situation, whenever we start judging the other person as being wrong, we have unplugged ourselves from our God socket. We are no longer seeing from a clear perspective. We are no longer, coming from God's divine consciousness. Whenever we judge, that's ego. That's ego.
Okay, so the point that I got from that story was that yes, you judged it. And of course, you were a little fearful, but you also stopped to recognize that this is a call for love. And then you remember, feeling it and sending it. Well, that's the point. Forget about the judgment. I mean, yes. That was part of it, but that's something that we have to learn to get past. Well, the story I have a problem with dreams. I really am. During the day I'm fine. At night I don't sleep well, and if I do go to sleep, I have dreams, and I wake up very fearful in the middle of the night. All my fears, for whatever they are, come alive in the middle of the night. Okay, I can't sleep. I toss, I turn, I have to get up. In fact, I find that when that happens, I always state an affirmation. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists here in lots of pieces. And that's what I do. And the feeling always goes away. It goes away. Okay. When I do that, affirmations work for me. Okay. So I have that licked, except I still have these dreams. The dream I had the other day. Now, this is a heavy duty dream. I dreamt that I was the victim of a terrorist and I was captured. And I was thrown into a room, and these captives were on the other side of that room that I was closed into, where I could see outside. And they had rifles. They broke through, and one of them had a rifle right in my face with his hand on the trigger. That's how deep, intense this dream was. And then I woke up. Okay, I felt the terror of what a hostage would feel like. You know what I'm saying? It was so terrifying, because there's nothing like it. I felt it. And I wake up and I realize it's a dream. I don't like having it. I don't like waking up that way, but I deal with that too. If I'm not having a dream, I'm just waking up fearful for something, and I don't even know what it is that I'm fearful about, because there is nothing there for me to be fearful of. And yet I wake up with that in the pit of my stomach. But I find that reaching for Jesus, I pretend that I'm holding his hand. I pretend that he has his arm around my neck or something. I'll talk to him, and the feeling goes away. Okay. And I don't question, why am I feeling this way? I don't question that I hate feeling this way. I just know that I feel that way, and I give it over to Jesus. Okay. And sometimes, and I got to tell you, it described that bad dream, but they're not as bad as they used to be. I mean, this is a pretty bad dream, but I used to get them more often. Now I have reprieves. I can go for 2-3 weeks and be fine, and then have something like that happen, something horrific, involving terrible violence. Now, where does that come from? I don't know. I'm not a violent person. I love the world. Anyway, I give it to you,
The
Susan.
dream, it sounds like for all of us, the dreams are especially, it's nice that you're able to remember them. I'm remembering a lot of my dreams lately also.
Well, I
But
don't
I
remember
think
all of them. I don't remember most of them, but the real bad ones I remember. Go ahead.
But the dreams are, I believe, showing us some parts of our unconscious that still need healing. I have some really wacky dreams myself. The other night, I think this was about 5 nights ago, I dreamt that somebody stabbed me in the foot.
That's
And
pretty bad too.
it is, right? And
Wow,
then
I thought
all
I
of a
was the
sudden,
only one. You have them too.
oh, of course. Later in the dream, I looked at my foot and I could still walk. I could still use it. I saw the scar, but I have some really intense dreams. I believe that we just all have wounds in our unconscious that will surface when we're ready to release them, when we're ready to see them and we're ready to heal them. They don't surface until we're strong enough to heal them, because sometimes I get to these points in my life. I mean, my life goes up and it goes down. I mean, I have the good times in my life, I have the challenging times in my life. Sometimes there's a challenge that surfaces right when I feel the most connected to God. I feel so spiritually centered. I feel so good. And then all of a sudden I'm faced with a challenge and I say, wow, well, if the external world is only reflecting back to me an internal situation, why is this challenging situation happening to me right now when I feel so centered? Well, a lot of times when we're ready to heal something, it'll present itself not to punish us or to bring us down, but just because it's now ready to be released. Because I've said that to a lot of my friends too, when they're going through dark times, difficult times, challenging times. One of my friends just had a challenging situation arise with a family member, and she was taken aback by what this family member said to her, but because it wasn't very nice. I mean, it was really, really not very nice. But again, sometimes when things are ready to be healed, they come to the surface, and the lesson is all about love and forgiveness, you know but it's just not easy. It's just not easy. A Course in Miracles says the answer is simple. The truth is simple, but it's just not always easy, because I mean, you think of it. I mean, this family member, I mean, same thing happened to me. I hate to talk about other people. Really, I can always bring it back to myself. I had a situation with my own sister not that long ago, where she accused me of something that I don't think I did. She accused me of not being happy for her, but I think I was happy for her. So she sent me this long text message accusing me of not being happy for her. And my first reaction was ego, but I was happy for her. I don't know why she is accusing me of not being happy for her. I don't know why she is accusing me of not being supportive of her. And I just got so angry and so defensive and so hurt. And I decided not to call her for as long as I could. And eventually she's going to have to suck it up and beg my forgiveness, because she's accusing me, of something I didn't do. And I sat with that feeling for about a week, until finally I decided to reach out to her and talk about her accusation. I didn't call her until I could really come from a place of compassion and love. And when we did talk, the situation healed itself. So I guess the answer in all situations is to sit with the pain point, whatever that pain point might be.
Yeah, but
And when you
Susan, I think probably what I today might have done with a text like that, because I get them from my daughter. I'm the same thing. I could talk. I have a thing with my daughter. Okay, but the way to do it, is, look at the text, see what you said, and say something like, "I'm so sorry you feel that way. I would never want to hurt you. I love you." And that's the text, and I would forget it. That's what I think I would do today, not to get caught up in that and so forth. And a lot of issues in my life have come along where I've had to, take that into consideration. And when I react that way, then it's the best you can do, and then not let it fester. Anytime somebody accuses me of something, instead of defend myself, I tell them how sorry I am they feel that way, and that I would never intentionally ever say or do anything, whatever the issue is. And I please forgive me. That's it. And you'd be surprised how far that goes, because there's nothing they can say to that.
That's great advice, Myrna. I think that's great advice. I think we need to keep it real. So I would love to be able to do that. I guess what's important for me is to keep it real. So it kind of took me a week to process that pain point within myself, because I did take it personally when she first sent that text. I wasn't able to let it go immediately. It took me a week to process the pain point. Maybe the next time that she sends me a text, it'll take me, a few days, and finally I'll get to the point where I don't take it personally at all. I mean, what a lot of enlightened masters say is that when you're enlightened, You don't take the insults personally, but at the same time, you don't take the compliments so personally either. You don't really let the world affect you so much, And again, I remember who it was. It was Deepak Chopra, I think, that originally I got that from. He says, the more enlightened we are, the less personally we take the world. So it's the negative stuff kind of bounces off, but then the compliments kind of bounce off also. And then Alan Cohen was telling this story about this enlightened master in some far off country who paid someone to follow him around and insult him all day long, at different times. And this was his way of learning not to take the world so personally, learning not to take insults personally.
That'll do it, I would think, right? I paid somebody to insult me all day long. After a while, I might become desensitized.
Immune.
That's not immune. That's not such a bad thing.
Right, immune
Right?
to criticism, because most of us,
That's getting there the fast way. That's when you save 1,000 years, when you can do that.
Right, because the Course in Miracles is all about saving time. It says time will no longer be in effect when time no longer serves learning purposes, right? The reason we have time now is because we use it to learn from. Well, Course in Miracles saves time because A Course in Miracles is out of time. So it's all good. It's all coming together and it's all good. And it's like when we can really just connect to that unconditional love. Another thing that came up for me in this morning's meditation is God told me how much he loved me. God told me how much he needed me. God told me how much he needed my voice and my spirit to extend his miracles to the world. I mean, we're all needed. I mean, A Course in Miracles tells us that God needs each and every one of us so very much. And it's not arrogant to think of yourself that way. It's actually arrogant to not think of yourself that way. But it's difficult. It is difficult. I mean, to know that we are loved, to know that I am great, to know that I am beautiful, to know that I am empowered. It's a
challenge, right?
Yeah.
It is. Well, it's okay because we are getting there. That's the whole thing. We're getting there. We are. You are. I am. And what's wrong with taking a leap? Because I see it. I see it in you. And I've known you. Look how long we've known each other. And we started out with A Course in Miracles. And we went through a lot of trials and tribulations along the way, and now we're here to because we're evolved enough to be able to relate to what we've learned,
And the truth is, we actually are with God right here, right now, if we can just embody that truth. You talk about affirmations, Myrna, and I love affirmations. My favorite affirmation lately that I say to myself each and every morning is I embody the essence of innocence. I embody the essence of innocence. because I am not guilty. God has
I
not
love that.
condemned me. The only person that has ever condemned me is myself, but not my true self with a capital S, my
Oh,
egoic self with a small s. That's the only person that ever condemns me. So when I can
yeah.
embody the essence of innocence, I release all my grievances and I connect to God truly, and that allows him to work through me.
You know
And
which
on
one
that,
I like? As long as you're talking about affirmations, if I defend myself, I am attacked. I love that one because that really gives me food for thought. You know, I just wanted to say that.
I love that. And on that note, it is 4 o'clock, and I love you so much, Myrna. Thank
Love
you for being
you.
here with me today. I love our conversations here. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The only thing that is real is the love, and I love you. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn. Thank you. Thank you.